Welcome to episode number 5 of the Wheels and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Ben Durham, and today we have Tamsine Gervais on as our guest. She's an urbanist, a student in the Bachelor of Environmental Design and Planning program at Fanshawe College, and a founder of Strong Towns London. She's passionate about understanding how the environment shapes our lives and building places where people truly want to be. She moved to London 8 years ago and quickly fell in love with the city, flaws and all. And finally took her own advice and bought a commuter bike after years of preaching the importance and benefits of choosing active transportation wherever possible. She and I sat down at the Green in the charming and walkable Wortley Village here in London, Canada, which is currently where Tamsine lives, although she commutes all around the city. After her undergrad, she's planning on pursuing a master's in urban planning so that she can turn her passion into a career. And right before we jump in, here's a sneak peek into the topics we cover in this episode. How she was one of the original Not Just Bikes fans back when he only had 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. A bit about the City of London's stellar staff and services, her experiences getting around London, bike valets, and a bunch of other topics. But before all of that, how did we even meet? I forget how this happened. Was it Strong Towns?
It was Strong Towns.
Okay.
So my partner and I have been looking into Strong Town stuff for a long time, and we just noticed that there wasn't one in London yet. So we decided to get in touch with the Strong Towns, just kind of parent organization, and we started Strong Towns London, and we've been going for a couple months now. And we just had a lot of interest right in the beginning of people who were like, thank you for starting this. I've been wondering if there's one in London and happy to see it going. So Ben was one of them. And yeah, we hosted a couple meetings so far, and yeah.
And so far, so good.
Yeah.
I like action items, and so like there are action items happening now.
Yes.
But you were mentioning just before while we were setting up about 3,000 and Not Just Bikes, and you're like, I was one of the OGs.
Yes. Okay. So
please tell me more about that.
Yeah. So it was years and years and years ago, back when I was in school for something else, and all my kind of break time was watching YouTube videos, and I stumbled upon Not Just Bikes, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. This guy's small YouTuber, 3,000 subscribers, and I was like, I think this content is so interesting and I care about this so much. And I'm like, I think it's crazy this guy's not huge yet. And then he absolutely blew up, and urbanism blew up, and it was exciting to see a voice, because he's London local, exciting to see a voice from here talking about what it was like growing up in London, what it's like to see just the city changing over time and what they're doing right, what they could be doing better. And he lives in the Netherlands now because he's fled the country to go live somewhere that
He ditched us.
Yeah. But he's done a lot to I know inspire a lot of kind of new urbanists and a lot of people that are newly interested in a lot of these things. So
we were also saying that it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh, maybe I should get into urbanism. But then I realized, are there going to be jobs? Because it's so, everyone wants to go into it now because it's so interesting how we design cities, and we want to make our cities better. And so people are taking these bits of education. How many years is it?
My program's 4 years. I just finished my first one. But you can do a lot of different things. There's diploma programs that are 2 years. A lot of people go on to do their masters to be a city planner. But there's a lot of different venues that you can get into. But yeah, I think that it's something that people are kind of surprised that they're interested in, because they start, someone will do city building video games, or they'll play SimCity and all this stuff.
City Skylines.
Yeah, and it's really fun. And then you're like, oh shoot, I am actually really interested in this. This is actually really cool. And then you find out that you can go to school and study these things, or you don't even have to go to school. You can just get actively involved in the community around you and participate in city building in some way. So I think that there's, I think we are going to see a big uptick in how many people are looking for jobs in that sort of market in the next few years, considering a lot of my students, or a lot of my, not students, peers, have gotten into it because in that same pipeline where it's YouTube, Not Just Bikes. Okay, I want to do this for a living. Let's get into it. But I do think that there's always going to be that availability of you can get involved in some way, and there's always just a lot of opportunity out there. But yeah, I think that there's also a lot of new urbanists coming through where you've seen a lot of like old school engineers and old school planners that have been in the profession forever. And now you're seeing a lot of new interest in the industry where it's a lot of younger folks.
And you're saying like there's going to be new jobs and everything. And I actually agree because I'm just thinking of this. The active transportation manager right now, who is Daniel Hall at the City of London, that was pushed for by, I forget who, but that position never existed.
Yeah.
And the reason I was thinking of this is extra positions, sure. But Waterloo and Kitchener-Waterloo, they have an active transportation team.
Yeah.
Because you need a team to do this. Like Dan is... I'm not going to call out what he ends up having to do. He has to do a lot because it's him.
Yeah.
Him, himself, and him. Like, there's no team. And so, like, obviously there's the rest of the staff or team, but that department is him, which is terrifying that he has to decide all of these and weigh in on all of these small little finite details on every single project ever in the city from now on.
It's a lot of work. Like if you think about all these little things that you have to think about, like there's so many decisions that have to be made just about one bike lane. And to think about a whole network overall, like it's got to be a really big job. So yeah, I think that cities are starting to really embrace the importance of active transportation. There's a lot of new like legislation and like new funding. City of London just got new funding for it. So I am also hoping that that's going to just expand and we're making room for more positions like that because it's super important. And we're now just realizing that like we don't have to just think about cars when we're designing. We have to think about all of it.
I was going to say that the bridge that just went in, Rideout Bridge. Nope, that's not Rideout Bridge. It's on Rideout. It is
it Victoria?
Yeah, Victoria Bridge. There have been a few complaints here and there about its design. The interesting thing is, I can't remember how many years ago its design was like passed, and it takes so long for infrastructure projects to go through that this was before Dan. And Dan, I think that was like 3 years ago he got into that position. So that bridge had been planned, I think 5 years out or more. And now it just in the last few weeks opened. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is you were mentioning traffic volume increasing now that it's open again. How was it when it was closed?
It was lovely. So I just got my bike, newer cyclist, and so it was really nice to learn like just a lot about cycling because I used to cycle as a kid, but it was almost always sidewalks or like really quiet roads. So I've had the privilege of learning a lot more about cycling on the road on Rideout when it was close to traffic through the bridge. But yeah, when it opened, was really excited to see it open on, I think on the 4th. And then all of a sudden overnight, it was just traffic everywhere. And I didn't realize it was going to be so much because I haven't lived around here. So I was just shocked to see how much actual through traffic there is. And it's good. I'm glad that people are using the bridge. It was obviously like needed if there's this much traffic everywhere. But yeah, it's been a big jump. It's been definitely louder with all the cars. Happy to see all the buses going through all the time. It's always really good to see the frequency. But yeah, there's a lot more cars and a lot more. The first couple days were definitely difficult because everyone's getting used to using Rideout again, and everyone's just getting used to like, oh, there's a couple one-ways just off of it, and so turning places, you can see cars getting a little bit confused. That's always a little bit spooky, but yeah, I'm happy that the bridge went in, but it's really interesting that like it's a good point that this type of infrastructure takes forever, and with all the bureaucracy that's involved, like it has to go through so many different things in order to actually come to fruition. And yeah, like you can see that the decisions that they made 5 years ago or so, those are now coming to life. And we've learned a lot in the past 5 years in just the transportation in general, like what are best practices. So those have differed. So new projects that you see putting in, like sometimes they will be really up to date and sometimes they still are going the old way a little bit. So
I'm just thinking of how on the teams this is going, like the older people are like, no, we're doing it this way. And the young people come in, be like, no, why does it have to be done that way? And I feel like that's always like every generation. They come in with their new damn ideas. The new youngins, they don't know. They don't know what I know. And it's like, yes, but also maybe consider other transportation methods other than vehicles. So I think that's the revolution, which is, it's kind of funny that is now a revolution just to not go by this one thing.
Yeah, we just want to be able to walk again. We just want to be able to bike again. Like, it's not that crazy, but yeah. And the other thing is, like, there's a bit of a class separation where, like, a lot of the people who are in the positions to make the decisions about what we should do or how we should think about something are the people that can afford to have a car and drive it to work. And so it's not necessarily intentional ignorance. It's just they happen to not have to use other methods to get around. So they don't actually experience what it's like to just be like, okay, I can't afford a car. How else am I going to get around? Am I going to be able to go down to this place? Not really, because there's no sidewalk and, like, it's hard to bike there. And the bus only goes so far, and then I can't get to my destination. So then you end up just choosing to not go somewhere.
I wonder, you know how in other industries, other things in life, there's conflict of interest.
Yes.
I wonder if that is a conflict of interest when you are designing a city and you're responsible for transportation, and yet you solely rely on a personal vehicle.
Yeah.
And yet you're designing for everything outside of a vehicle too. Mm-hmm. You're like, this is probably fine. When in reality, it's like, wait, no?
Yeah.
I wonder if they, being anyone who does anything with transportation, should go like a week every few months without their vehicle and be like, how am I going to do this?
Absolutely. So it's something that I really, really want, and it's so hard to enact and enforce because it's hard to say, like, okay, you have to do this. But there have been a lot of great initiatives, like the bike to work things that are going on, where we would love to see people who are usually using a single occupancy vehicle as their main, like, choice for whatever trip they're doing to just make a different choice, choose to walk that day, choose to see what the bus is like, choose to see what it's like to take their bike somewhere. Because that gives a lot of insight into what it's really like and what, if you're just driving, the main thing that you're thinking about is what your experience is like in a car. And it's hard to shift your brain into really thinking about not just the car, but what is it like for the pedestrian, and what is it like for the cyclist, and what is it like for someone on a mobility scooter that, you know, might not have, like, a convenient curb cut or, like, a crosswalk that's within, like, a reasonable, like, distance.
Not 2 kilometers down the road.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know that it is not illegal to jaywalk in Ontario?
Yes, and I say this to everybody, and I am the biggest jaywalking advocate because I think that it's ridiculous. And when we first built roads, the expression right of way just meant that someone was able to be in this public space. Right of way did not used to mean, oh, the car is the one that's supposed to go right now. But it has evolved to mean a lot of the times, like, who dominates the road, or who, you know, has permission to go in this conflict, and who has to stand by and wait for the other person to go. But back in the day, it was just that people were allowed to be in the space that is the common space and that we now call the road. So I'm not saying that I like to jaywalk all the time.
I do, actually, because I do it safely, but, like, I stare drivers down. I'm like, I am crossing right now.
Yeah.
If you stop, or if you don't stop, you're in so much trouble. Yeah. 1, you'll dent your car.
Yes.
2, I'm suing you.
Yes. But yeah, like, it's one thing to put up marked crosswalks or curb cuts or, like, lights to tell drivers to stop and let pedestrians go by. But, like, at the end of the day, if they don't stop, they're not stopping. So I think as long as a pedestrian, as long as you're aware of your surroundings and you're crossing safely, just, you can walk across the road. It's okay.
And know that, at least in Ontario, it's not illegal. So if a cop's like, nuh-uh, you're like, nuh-uh.
Actually.
Yeah. Well, actually.
Yes. I have jaywalked in front of a cop before, and it felt so freeing. I felt so good.
Like, yes.
This is my right.
However, I want to bring this up. I film everything. Like, if something begins to happen, I, like, whip out my GoPro and I just start rolling. Like, I've been filming for work on the side of the road, and someone, like, pulls over and is like, hey, what you doing? I literally reach into my pocket, click the go button, and it starts rolling, and I just hold it up. And I can see in the footage later, people are like, why are you filming? And sometimes it's a very innocent thing. This guy literally was like, hey, do you do filming? Do you do music videos? Can I hire you? I'm like, what? Oh, what? Not really, by the way. I don't. But yeah, sometimes it's innocent. And then sometimes people are like, you can't film here. Yeah. I had one person, this is more on the filming side, but it is very interesting about public property and what is expected of people. And it does tie into like urban stuff. I was filming actually a ride along, but this was for running counselors way back in 2022. Yeah. And I was filming over on Colburn Street or something. And it happened that someone's house was in the backyard it happened that someone's house was in the background of the footage. And they come out and they're like, "You can't film here. I will sue you if this goes online." And I'm like, we're on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Miss, it's okay. You're like, it's blurred out. It's fine. She's like, "No, you have to delete that footage right now." I'm like, "No, I do not have to delete that footage right now."
Hate to break it to you, but your house is visible from the sidewalk.
Exactly. It's like, whoopsies. It wasn't the focal point. I sure made it the focal point after that. I'll be like, "Okay, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me make this more in the shot."
Yeah.
No, I didn't actually. But anyway, but the reason I bring that up, one, it was a funny story that just popped into my head. Two, I think a lot of people, when it comes to parking, think that the street parking is theirs. It's like, you can't take that away.
Yes. Yeah, they're like, "Oh, this is this is the place that I always park my vehicle, and I'm going to be heavily inconvenienced." And it is, I understand that if someone's used to just being able to just drive up to a business or drive up to somewhere and get out and walk, 10 feet and then get to their destination, it is a bit of a change for them. But at the end of the day, almost everyone starts and ends their commute by walking or rolling in some way. And then whether in between is a car or a bike or something, public transportation, at the end of the day, we are all people who are generally pedestrians on the street. And I think that taking away parking or moving parking to, maybe just a different spot and opening up the street to just more like human scale travel is super, super good for all of us. And I think it's a bit less of a pain than people make it out to be, to walk a little bit further to your car.
Thoughts on mobility? So if you remove parking, and this is just kind of a, not even a softball question, just a curveball.
Yeah.
So when someone says, "Well, what about my grandmother who needs a wheelchair and needs to pull up to the front of a business?"
I think generally retain the accessibility parking spots, and they don't take up much space. You don't need as many of them, but it's when you see, this beautiful historic street, and then you look down the street and it's just car after car after car after car, and you can barely get between the two cars to get to your actual destination. Yeah, I think a few just accessibility spots is totally fine to keep in the, close to the destination, but I think move the rest of them out of there.
And I also bring that up for a reason, because those used to not exist. It was through people advocating for handicap parking and new mothers or expecting mothers. Those spots are all new. They didn't exist way back when. Yeah. And so when you say, let's remove the parking spots and have bike parking, etc., that's also a new thing. Have you experienced lack of parking?
Yeah, so on the other side of it, I work at a coffee shop, and there is a bike rack in the kind of just in our parking lot, but it's on the other side. It's not immediately visible to people coming in. And we have people coming in all the time that just show up on their bike and they want to come in. We're not, as a business, we're not supposed to let them in with the bikes. And I just let them, because it's not easy to go get your bike up like over there's no curb cut for it. So you have to haul your bike up over the thing and tuck it in, and then it's really far away out of sight. But so on my end, like even at just my place of work, like there's not really like readily accessible bike parking. And yeah, just on the other side, like on the cyclist, like the user side, I will definitely just not stay somewhere. Like if I pull over and there's not bike parking, I just don't feel safe leaving my bike somewhere, and I'll carry on to the next place that I want to go to, because it's just not worth it for me. Like a little trip into the store isn't worth like just my main mode of transportation getting taken away. So yeah.
Yep. And yet you could have been a customer.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's a sensitive topic. I drive, I understand, but there are so many times where, actually, the majority of the time I get around the city now, we choose to bike, especially to downtown. And we hit up downtown a lot. Yeah. And we go to bakeries and shops and different everything. But we don't want to deal with the parking. But that's the same in like Montreal or Toronto or any other city that is over like the size of a small town. We are no longer a small town here in London.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So we got on a few side tangents. That's what I specialize in. So did you have anything else to say about bike racks?
Yeah. So, okay. So my summer co-op, we did a little bike survey for the City of London downtown, just looking at just the state of repair and like existing or not existing, basically, of bike racks around the downtown area. So that was our study area. So that really kind of opened my eyes to like just seeing bike racks in general all around. Like once you start looking for them, you see them everywhere. And one thing I will say is the city definitely does like care about the state of its bike racks, and you can put in a request for maintenance or repair and they will come so quickly to fix it. We put in one, so this is not necessarily bike rack, but the fix-it station over in Wortley, the bicycle pump was broken and my partner sent out an email, and then within 2 hours they had a new one switched out and repaired. So there is someone listening. There is someone that's like, hey, is there something wrong with this bicycle infrastructure? Like, is there a sign that needs to be fixed? Did a sign go down? Is the bike rack really loose and dysfunctional? Was there a bike rack previously there and it's somehow disappeared? Did someone take it? We'll replace it. So this survey was just basically getting data out to the city, just saying this is the state of repair of all these bike racks in the study area. But that was for the downtown area. But then you start to go outside the downtown area, and there's just a huge like kind of bike rack desert where like they haven't put in the bicycle infrastructure. And so these people living out like in the East End where there's not as much, updates and not a lot of new roads, there's a huge lack of infrastructure there. And they've done a really good job along Dundas where they're still working on it, but there's a bike lane and there's a lot of bike racks, and you can bike over to, Squeaky Wheel Bike Co-op, and there's some good infrastructure basically from here all the way to that end. And
I was at Squeaky Wheel the other day, and I saw 4 separate people. I was just talking with Jensen, and while we were chatting, probably 20 minutes, in that time, 4 people stopped by the fix-it station, and like one pumped up their tires, one was like, oh, your tire's low, let's pump up here. And then like I saw that kind of conversation happen, and they learned how to blow up a tire, or he was like, hey, this is how you do it. And then a few other people were just tightening things, and I'm like, wow, that is a lot of use right then and there. I didn't expect to see that much use. Yeah. And it's actually very well used. Yeah. So.
And like it's something where like if you're on your bike and you're on the road, like if something goes wrong and you need it fixed, it's hard to just like abandon your bike and go home. And sometimes it's just not rideable. So it's really good to have these spots like just kind of here and there. I've used them. I've had to pump up a tire.
Do you know where to find them aside from visually? Is there an app? I actually don't know that one because I have tried to look it up.
The thing is, like, I don't know if the city has them posted. I have a map, but I'm not sure if it's data open to the public. But I know that it might be on those paper maps that they just published.
Oh, right.
That might be a spot because I know that they have routes. So they did like a bicycle infrastructure map, and there's a 2023 version, and they just finished their 2024, and it might be on that, but I'm not sure. But there are not that many is what I found. There's one at City Hall. There's one in Wortley. There's one over at the London Bicycle Cafe. I'm not sure if it's a full fix-it station or just a pump. Yeah, there's not that many. I would love to see more because they're great. They're great when I see them. Very happy.
You know what? I think they are along the TDP too.
Yes.
At strategic locations. Yeah. I just don't know where those locations are.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
The one at City Hall, you mentioned how fast they fix it. I did report that it was broken at one point.
Yeah.
And yesterday we showed up for a council meeting and it was fixed. And I was like, wow, that was quick. But that's a few weeks. I just hadn't been back to that specific one.
Yeah.
But
no, they're pretty good. And that's like just the kind of public engagement that you need sometimes is not everyone has all eyes on everything all the time. So it's just like there are avenues for you as just like part of the public to just speak up, say something, and usually they can try and get it done, or they can get back to you and tell you why they can't do it. That's another thing.
Yes. Yep. A lot of tree reporting that I do is just requesting trees to be planted, and they don't tell me if they can't because it goes to another team. They analyze the whole situation and it either happens or it doesn't. But I think I've brought this up a few times, but I'll bring it up just one more time because you like trees.
I love trees.
But yeah, you can request service.london.ca. You can request trees or other things. Or, okay, for you drivers, potholes. They repair those pretty quickly too, within a few days. You can request, like, something's wrong with the road. You can fix that. Sidewalks too, anything else, bike racks, pretty much anything. Anything that is public. Yeah. And if there isn't something, you can do a generic one, I think. Haven't done that yet because there's so many good categories. But I'm sure you could just do a note, be like, at this place in London, please fix this thing.
Yeah. Or there's a lot of decisions in terms of like, what are we going to put in as like an amenity? They do a lot of just public, they want public input because that's a big thing. Is like we want people, if we're going to put something in, we want people to use it. We want people to like it. We don't want to, the city doesn't want to spend a lot of money on something if it's not the right fit for something. So yeah, like just as a member of the public in general, just like seeing those surveys that go out and they say, what do you want? Or what do you think about this? Fill them out and answer them because you will actually see change in your community that it might go the direction that you like if enough people agree with you. So.
Thoughts on people complaining and then not doing that?
I think that, so I know that in the just planning and politics world in general, there's a lot of bureaucracy, but a lot of the bureaucracy that's in place is setups that we can listen to public opinion and have proper avenues to actually enact things that the public wants or respond appropriately to what the public has said. But a lot of the times, like, you have to have it from both sides. You can complain about something and then, attention will be drawn to the issue, but then you should also be someone who's ready to propose solutions. And like, not everyone has a solution for everything, but if you have a suggestion, if you have something that you think might work better, definitely speak up and say it and get your voice heard, because people that make all these decisions don't always have the right answer. And sometimes it is someone from the public that just has to say, maybe this is a better fit.
And even if, I really just want to bring this up. I was at a ward meeting, I forget, 3 weeks ago. And everyone's opinion is valid. Like, you get a little bit of time to talk. This guy went a little bit longer than he probably should have. But he was talking about how we should get a subway here in London, Ontario. And he's like, there's a map, there's this, that. Interestingly, a good idea. It's just a long way off, seeing as we couldn't get LRT or streetcars. Yeah. And then now it's BRT, but only in 2 of the 4 branches. And so there's all that. So the good news, though, is if you say that, if you bring that up, it just shows how much people want better modes of transportation, where it's like, okay, we're not getting a subway anytime soon, unfortunately, because that would be awesome.
Would be phenomenal.
But it's not happening just yet because we need to do the other things first. But just hearing that, and councillors hearing that, and city staff hearing that, if enough people start saying that, then it's like, wait, maybe people want something other than just cars.
Yeah. And like, a lot of the times people will say, oh, we want this, but there's not the money for it. But it is, in general, public opinion that will long-term sway people to change decisions about like budget allocations and stuff like that. Like, if enough of your city is saying, no, we need LRT to get around because the traffic's getting ridiculous and we can't expand, we don't want to expand to more lanes, then like, maybe LRT is the solution. And if you have 40% of the city saying, please give us LRT, some money might get moved around.
You mentioned more lanes. Would you like to dive into why more lanes are awesome for everyone?
So, I don't know if you guys have talked about induced demand at all on here.
Actually, okay, if you're watching, you may know, but we haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, so have fun with induced demand, and please go on.
I will preface this with, I have a driver's license. I, used to drive a car for years, and I know what it's like to be on the road and be frustrated and be mad that, everyone around me, I'm so sick of all the traffic around me. But in one more lane, would solve this because, so many more cars could get through and we'd be all good. I will say, traffic is not, the problem outside of you. You are the traffic. You're part of the traffic. A single occupancy vehicle takes up a lot of space on the road compared to basically any other mode of transportation.
On either side as well, as in a place to park it on both sides. It needs to take up space all of the time. It can't just be a pocket car.
Yeah. But so induced demand is this proven phenomenon that happens when if you add one more lane, the road will just eventually get used more and more and more until it's just as busy as it was before you put the lane in, because it's just about the decision that drivers are making. So let's say there's this really busy arterial road. The city says, okay, we're going to put one more lane in to accommodate the traffic demand that's there. And there's a certain traffic volume, and we're going to widen the road so it can accommodate this volume. More people start to use this road because they're like, oh, perfect, there's another lane. Traffic is moving so, nicely now. And this keeps happening until there's enough decisions made that so many drivers are using this road that it gets congested again. So you are just inducing these people to come use this beautiful new wider road until it gets just as busy as it was before you built the lane. And we see this all the time. We see there's pictures, if you go way back in the day, of old London, and you see these giant roads, these like huge roads that exist nowadays were just one lane, each way, back in these old black and white photos. And then now they're giant, and they were just as congested now as you saw back in the day when it was one direction, like one lane each way. And it's really just, if you build it, they will come. If you give drivers the space to drive somewhere, they're going to drive on it. And it doesn't mean that the roads are just going to be all of a sudden so empty and beautiful and drivable for everyone. It just means that they're going to be just as congested, but there's so much more traffic volume because it's wider. So I know that cities are starting to acknowledge that and understand that and learn that, road widening is not always the best thing. It is a good fit for some roads. There are some roads that it does need it. But a lot of the times it's really not the best solution. And the better solution is maybe putting in a transit-only lane, or putting in like a bike lane, or like a multi-use pathway, or making space for other modes of transportation so that, you can move more people in these alternative transportation lanes and then still move cars through, but not necessarily add another lane for more cars to get through.
And for those of you who know about induced demand, I feel like this is just the Ask the Audience to Do Things podcast. But people will show up to council. Your neighbors will show up. If there's a widening project, they'll be like, yes, we want this because there's so much traffic and we need that belt to be expanded because we've eaten too much, essentially. That's how you can think of the road widening bit. And if you don't show up and then say, no, we need alternatives, we need other options, and we do not need that road widening, then it may get widened. And that is going to cost you a lot in taxes, because road widening is not cheap. It's a lot to maintain. Yeah.
And a lot of the times there's not space for it, and they have to make a decision about, are they going to widen the road and maybe go to just, we can only fit sidewalk on one side of the road now because we had to add an extra lane. So you are, with a road widening project, a lot of the time you are losing amenities that you might want in your city.
Whether those are, hear me out, bike lanes, but sidewalks that are more narrow, and now fewer people will walk, and then now there's going to be more traffic. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, look, now we need more lanes. It's like, because you took away the other things. Not only that, sometimes in extreme cases, not even that extreme, you have to mow down businesses and housing as well. Yes. That's a lot of the highways now. And I want to know your thoughts on this, because I'm actually really stoked for London not having major highways or an expressway through it. We never did that. And a lot of people are like, oh, we need that. We can't do it now. It's like, good. I'm glad, because a lot of municipalities and cities and governments around the world are tearing them down because they realize how detrimental they are to the city. So I've
lived in a lot of places, but one of the places I lived, they did, to the dismay of all the local residents, they basically made a decision that the just a branch of the 407 was for sure going through our little town. And so it's kind of like a small area. It's Brooklyn, up near Oshawa.
Not that Brooklyn. Brooklyn.
Not Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn near Whitby, near Oshawa, near Toronto, Ontario.
There we go.
But so they basically, the decision was already made. They I don't know if there was any opening it up to public opinion. There probably was, but as you know how it goes with lobbyists and stuff, like a lot of the times it's just the decisions made internally and it's happening. So they ended up buying out a lot of really old farmers. A lot of businesses were bought out. A lot of people lost their houses, were paid off, obviously, because you have to pay them for their property. But they just kept raising the numbers of how much will you take until they got every single homeowner and farm owner to move out of the area. And then they bulldozed it and put in a branch of the 400 series highway that now when I go back on it, it's so empty. It was not worth it. And from like a top level perspective, like someone thought this highway was a great idea. And someone was like, this is what we need. The province of Ontario needs this like regional infrastructure. But someone has to pay for it. And at the end of the day, a lot of people lost like generational farms and generational homes. And I know that there were signs up everywhere, people saying like, please stop this highway build. We don't want it. But if the decision is already made and the money's already there, it's going through.
And the 407, that's private. Yeah?
Yes.
It's so, oh my goodness. I'm not going to get into politics here. However, a previous government sold it off for 99 years to a private company. So anything that you pay on the 407 does not go back to province or federal level, anything. It just goes to a company. And so I wonder when that happened, when they were building that, like if that was still like the government doing that, or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the timeline of that. But
that was an interesting one because this gets into the discussion about how we build roads and how we pay for them. And it's most of the time just places taking on debt to pay for them. And that decision to sell the 407 off was made with a really short-term mindset of like, we need to recuperate a lot of the money. And so it was sold off. And it really could have been like, those toll roads can be very like good for revenue generating and funding other, regional transportation projects and can go back to the federal government and pay into things. But now it's just all the money that you pay for your toll roads is just going into private pockets. So
I want to have an expert on here talk about roads and how much they cost. So I'm going to do that at some point because someone somewhere knows something more than we do. Yeah. And I want to hear from them.
It's mind-boggling, though.
Yeah. Don't worry. The 413, though, that'll solve traffic congestion. Oh,
just
my
one
God.
more highway, right?
One more highway, bro. Not even one more lane, bro. Just entire highway. Oh, it hurts so much. I haven't looked into the news. It's been flip-flopping whether it's happening or not, but I sure hope it isn't. I'm sorry for everyone who thinks that it's going to make a difference, but it is not worth it to tear down, like, I think it's like over 2,000 somethings, 2,000 acres, that sounds right, of farmland. That doesn't even seem that much. It is, though. It's a huge problem, and it should not happen. Okay, that's my little tidbit there. Yep.
But yeah, we've lost a lot of like historical places or like places that we really value as human beings have been torn down to build like highways that go through cities or that like trail along waterfronts because, back in the day it was like, oh, it would be so beautiful to drive along this waterfront. But I think that, we've spent so long putting driving in cars at the very top of the list for everything. And then, just people's experiences walking or, going out to a park or cycling on the weekend have been put way, way lower just to prioritize car infrastructure.
Because people see it as not like a viable solution of, oh, well, I want to take my family there. Yes and no. Because we've built everything this way, it now is the most safe, reliable way to do that. But there's alternatives if we had directed funding.
A lot of those, those like kind of seaway raised highways, you see a lot of them being turned into these amazing urban spaces. They will say, okay, we're closing this space to cars, we're taking it down, or we're building like an elevated park. And they become just some of the most like attractive to people, like places to go, and it's become a destination. And that we've just reclaimed that space as human beings instead of having it be built for cars, which I am in big support of. But a lot of governments will say, oh, it takes too much money, demolition is really expensive. It's always, at the end of the day, it always sounds like a money thing, but it really is always a priority thing.
Yeah, building a city for people.
Yes.
That's the commonality in all of these podcasts
That's
so
all
far.
we want.
Yeah, just please, please, just consider the people, especially. We'll never end this. Like you're going through neighborhoods that people live in, and suddenly it's a thoroughfare.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
No, I live here.
Yeah.
It's like, not anymore.
Yeah.
Ha!
Yeah. Or those little signs that say, please, my children live here, slow down. And then person in there like, ram 25 inches. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The sign is unfortunately not doing much, and we need to make kind of bigger changes, I think, to make sure that people are safe. But
design changes.
yes. Anything else you want to cover or touch on?
I wanted to pick your brain on those things. You brought up the parking. I'm actually looking at your bike right now regarding like a parking survey, and I was thinking of bike parking in the bike lockers.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and I'm realizing I don't think your bike would fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, your handlebars are too high because it's a nice upright bike.
So I love my bike. It's a cruiser. She's great. But what we're seeing a lot more of as people get into just using cycling as their primary form of transportation, or as just, swapping out those like shorter trips in their car to just be on their bike. You see people like with a trailer or with like just a lot of bags, or, my upright bike is very Dutch and doesn't fit in a lot of places. She's really tall. So yeah, the bike lockers, I don't think it would fit in there. And I think we don't have enough of them. They're a great concept and I would like to use them. But yeah, I would like to see them more around the city, but I would also like to see, places thinking of not just us as cyclists. We're asking, hey, please think of us. But then we're also asking, please think of us a little bit more and like think of like all the different ways that we might be using our bike. And you have people like taking their kids in the little bike trailer, or you have people with the like really high upright seats on the back of their wheel. And that doesn't necessarily fit in a lot of places that are made for bikes right now. Or even like the width of the bike lanes, or like how much tolerance a space is giving you to like come down from like a sidewalk down to the road, is not super easy to do when you have like different attachments. So yeah, I think just if we're going to build roads to be like, oh, look at all these big trucks we have now, we need to accommodate, like we make design decisions so based on, are we accommodating for every driver on the road? And we're not thinking about the same for people who use alternative forms of transportation. Yep. So yeah, I think like more bike lockers would be great. Bigger bike lockers would be great. I think there's like 6 stalls in it. I think
yes.
It fits,
yeah.
3 on each side.
And there's 3 of them in London, and they're all in the downtown area.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, and like I think that if we're gonna, ask for people to change their behaviors, we have to design for it. So we have to make sure that, there's this type of infrastructure readily accessible around them, and not just, we've put in all this great infrastructure, but you can only use it downtown.
Actually, this was in a Strong Towns video that we were watching. There's a full-time bike valet I was just trying to figure out which city it was. Somewhere in the U.S., I believe it was the U.S., there's a full-time bike valet, and you can just drop off because of all of those interesting, unique bikes now, whether they have kid trailers or cargo bikes, longtail, or the box Fiats. And I'm probably still messing up the pronunciation of that, but the box bikes with the cargo in the front.
Yeah.
Sometimes that cargo are children. And those don't fit in the lockers. But one of the best solutions is just having a secure, like paying a salary to... Okay, a few different salaries because shifts are a thing, but having a either 12, 16, 24-hour bike valet downtown, especially for events. And
like it's that whole saying yes to small bets of like, hey, this bike valet worked, it had a great turnout at Sunfest. Could we put one in a little more permanently? Small trial phase. I know that, a lot of infrastructure projects, they'll do a pilot, they'll see if it works, then if it's good, then they'll actually invest a lot more money into it. And that's just, it's a really good, I know right now the way that London's events are going, the bike valets are super asked for. I know that people are always contacting of like, where is it? How do I get in there? How does it work? All this stuff. So like there's public interest and people are using it. And when I used it at Sunfest, it was full and they were great. And I handed Andrew from London Bike Cafe my bike and just came to pick it up.
Peace.
And it was great. So yeah, more of those.
Anything else you wanted to cover?
I think that's it for now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
I
Well,
think
I
more
hope
in
to
the
have you
future.
back on,
Yes.
along with everyone else that I've chatted with. I feel like everyone has something else to say, but
Or I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna be like, oh, one more thing.
it's always like, oh, I wish I had said that. So
Yeah.
that's why.
You're gonna see me in the comments.
Yeah. Be like, wait,
one more thing.
One more. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching. I think that's all I have for you. So, yeah. Bye.